We had fought World War I, and while the Allies won that conflict, the aftermath was a disaster. Germany was, inflation was just rampant. The Great Depression hit the United States, and from here it went all over the world in 1929. In 1933, Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, and he immediately started to build up German war machine. He didn't like the treatment that Germany had received at the end of World War I. The Versailles Peace Treaty had limited Germany's armaments very severely, and Hitler didn't like that at all. Also, they had tried a democratic form of government in Germany, but the problem with that was that there were too many different political parties, and nobody could get a majority. So the democratic government just sort of fizzled. Hitler was a person who believed that, we need a strong leader. And I'm it, boys. I'm it. And he was. He was a strong leader. He was a very compelling speaker. He influenced a great many people simply by his speeches. Well, he got into power. Things started getting worse and worse. By 1939, Germany and England particularly had talked, and no solution or no agreement had been reached. So Germany went into Poland. England and France declared war. 1940, the English were driven out of the European continent. They left at Dunkirk, and thousands of ships of every sort came over and picked up those British troops. France fell, Paris was captured, Germany was riding high on the hog. In 1941, December 7th, what happened?
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. A date which will live in infamy. Those words came from a speech made by President Franklin Roosevelt, who on December 8th went before Congress and asked Congress to declare war on Japan, which Congress promptly did. The next day, Germany declared war on the United States. The United States declared war on Germany. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was a sneak attack. One of the unwritten rules of war is that if country A is going to war with country B, country A says so, declares war on country B. Japan didn't do this. Japan was country A in these circumstances. We were country B. What happened was that after much negotiation back and forth between Washington and Tokyo, capital of Japan, Tokyo government sent an ultimatum to Washington demanding certain concessions and stating that if those concessions were not met, then war would ensue. The instructions which accompanied that transmission were to have the Japanese envoy deliver the ultimatum to our Secretary of State, who was Cordell Hull at that time, precisely at 1 p.m. on December 7th, 1941. This didn't happen. There was a mix-up in the translation of the document, so the timetable was not met. The importance of the 1 p.m. deadline was that 1 p.m. in Washington was 8 a.m. in Honolulu, Hawaii. And at 8 a.m., the Japanese were scheduled to attack the United States fleet based at Pearl Harbor. Scheduled to attack, they did. This then was a sneak attack. And it infuriated the Americans, as well it should. Admiral Yamamoto, who was Commander-in-Chief of all the naval forces of Japan and was in command of this Pearl Harbor operation, said that in view of this fact that war was not officially declared, that he was afraid all Japan had done was awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. As it turned out, he was right. Well, we were asleep at that time. But that sneak attack really gave us some resolve to go in and end it. I went in the Navy in July of 1943. I went into what was known as the V-12 program. This was at the end of my junior year in college, and the V-12 program was a college program which was designed to, on completion of which, we went to midshipman school. At the end of that, which lasted 2 months, you were commissioned an ensign in the Navy. We were 60-day wonders. 60 days spent in midshipman school turns you from an apprentice seaman, which is the lowest grade in the Navy, to an ensign, which is the lowest ranking officer in the Navy. But between the apprentice seaman and the ensign, there are a whole lot of other grades, so you skip a lot. After midshipman school, I went to communication school at Harvard. And Harvard was, from a military point of view, just a naval training school. We had no contact whatsoever with the civilian faculty or students or staff. It was all strictly Navy. That lasted 4 months. Got out of Harvard, I went to Norfolk, Virginia, to the Naval Air Station down there on temporary duty. And then I got orders to go to the Pacific. And I was assigned to Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner's staff. Turner was Tom Phibbs' pack, Commander, Amphibious Forces, Pacific. And it's a lot easier to say Tom Phibbs' pack than Commander, Amphibious Forces, Pacific. Navy uses a lot of acronyms. I got to Pearl Harbor, mid-December of '44, and was assigned to Admiral Turner's staff. And after some sea training, we headed to Iwo Jima. And Iwo Jima is a small island in the 1,500 miles south of Japan. We wanted Iwo Jima because it provided, or would provide, a place for damaged aircraft to land after they were coming back from bombing Japan. So we took it. We went in, the Marines landed on Iwo Jima on February 19th, 1945. And that was probably the bloodiest battle of all the Pacific War. We lost some 5,000 to 5,500 casualties, either killed or wounded. Japanese lost more times there. Iwo Jima is a volcanic island. Mount Suribachi, which is at the southern end of the island, is an extinct volcano. And the place is covered with caves and other hiding places, particularly Suribachi. The Japs had machine guns, heavy guns, mortars. You know what a mortar is?
It's a fire.
It's a gun, the barrel about yay long. And what its purpose is to lob shells over into enemy positions. And when those shells hit, they explode. It's not like a machine gun, which fires single bullets. And you have to aim a machine gun. You have to aim a mortar to a certain extent, but its effect is more wide-reaching than machine guns. The Japanese were using those things with deadly accuracy, and we were losing a lot of people on the beaches. We ended up by not only using conventional firepower weapons or bullet-type weapons, mortar-type weapons, but also flamethrowers. You ever seen a flamethrower work? What they are, you've seen these portable washing machines where it's used for washing your car or under high pressure, or washing the side of your house or whatever. Well, a flamethrower is much the same way, it works much the same way, except instead of squirting water, it squirts a highly flammable liquid. And as soon as that liquid comes out of the nozzle of that gun, it's on fire. And anything that gets in the way of that flame is scorched, and I do mean scorched. There are pictures of Japanese soldiers running out of these caves, just on fire. And just burn up. Well, we left Iwo Jima in late February. We were there for a couple of weeks. And before we leave Iwo Jima, this top picture is an aerial photograph of landing craft going in to the beaches at evening. The bottom picture is Mount Suribachi, and I'll talk about that. Each one of those white streaks you see in that photograph, the top one, represents a boat, landing craft of some sort, carrying either personnel or equipment, and there are a lot of them there. The question was asked in the last period, how many people will those landing craft carry? And as I recall, so between 40 and 50, plus all the equipment carried. Mount Suribachi is now an extinct volcano, but at one time it was active, and sources of volcanic ash that's on Iwo Jima. But that picture, great up there, is a photograph of the Marines raising flag on the top of Mount Suribachi. That picture was taken by a photographer by the name of Rosenfeld. Actually, he took two pictures. That flag is the second flag that went up. The first flag was much smaller than that one. And I was standing on the bridge of our ship with a pair of binoculars, just looking around. I saw the first flag go up on Mount Suribachi. The commander, or one of the commanders on the beach, saw that flag and thought it was too small, so he gave a detail of men a larger flag to put up instead, and that's where that picture came from. And it's the picture that became really the icon of the Pacific War. And there's a statue in Washington which is taken from that picture. We left Iwo Jima, and then we went to Okinawa. Okinawa was not as bloody or gory a battle as Iwo Jima was, but it was pretty rough. We wanted Okinawa for two reasons. One, it was much closer to Japan and could serve as an air base, not only for crippled airplanes coming back from Japanese raids, but for a base from which to launch raids. The second reason we wanted it was it could act as a staging area or preparation area for the upcoming intended invasion of Japan. The Japanese, in order to defend that island, adopted a new technique, the kamikaze, the divine wind. What the kamikaze was a bunch of pilots flying planes, and the planes were equipped with a bomb, maybe two, and the purpose was to fly and crash into our ships. Now these pilots were, a lot of them were just young boys, 14, 15, 16 years old. They were trained to fly just so far. They were trained to take off, or start the engine, take off, fly the course, and crash into a ship. There was no return trip. We lost a lot of ships that way. At Okinawa, Okinawa is a fairly long, relatively narrow island. And around it, maybe 100, 150 miles out, we had a string of destroyers. The purpose of this was to have those destroyers let us know when an air raid was coming. And they did a fine job doing that, but with a heavy price. Because the Jap kamikaze knew this, and knew why those destroyers were there, and they would dive for them. And we lost several destroyers along with all the people on board. After Okinawa was secured, we left and headed for the Philippines. The Philippines by this time had been retaken. And we dropped anchor in Manila Harbor, and there we sat. And you could set your watch and by the time it started to rain. 3 o'clock, here comes the rain. 4 o'clock, the sun's out just like it is outside right now. Day after day after day after day. Same old thing. while we were in Manila, two things happened. In August of 1945, a B-29 Super Fortress carrying the atomic bomb, the plane was named the Noah Gay. It was commanded and flown by Colonel Tibbets. This plane dropped the first atomic bomb on Japan, dropped it on Hiroshima. A few days later, a second B-29 dropped a second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. This effectively brought the war to an end. You look back on it, both those cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were obliterated. Tens of thousands of Japanese people were killed. But you look back on it and you realize that if we had not done that, or done something similar to that to bring the war to a quick conclusion, if we had been forced to invade Japan, countless numbers of people, both Allied and Japanese, would have been killed. Because the Japanese mindset was such that they do not surrender. They die for the glory of their country. And no matter what happens, that is their main, or was, their main focus. Since the end of the war, that has all changed. The Japanese now have pretty much the same kind of outlook on life that we did. But back in those days, it was not the case. After the war was over, we went back to Pearl Harbor. I came home, had a 30-day leave, and then was ordered aboard the USS Missouri. And that's the Missouri. What's unique about this ship? Anything?
It's got two pontoons. It looks like it's got two sides to it.
This is a ship on which the Japanese surrender was signed. There's a plaque on it right now on the quarterdeck. And the quarterdeck is right about here where my finger is. And there's a plaque denoting the spot where the surrender was signed. I'll pass this around. You can look at it. And this picture was taken off of Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. And what it shows is Missouri firing 6 of its guns, and about halfway up the picture over on the right-hand side, you can see the 6 projectiles that came from those guns. What else is unique about the Missouri? Anybody?
Was that in Pearl Harbor?
Huh?
Was that in Pearl Harbor?
No, it wasn't even in a commission. Pearl Harbor was formed. Who was president of the United States when the war ended?
I know it wasn't Franklin, I think it was like
Truman. Harry S. Truman. Where was Truman from? Missouri. Truman was a very outspoken person. He called it like it was. He meant what he said, and he said what he meant. And while I don't think he demanded this, but he strongly suggested that the surrender papers be signed aboard the USS Missouri located in Tokyo Bay. And with his suggestion, you don't disagree. He was a very powerful person.
Please excuse the interruption. There are two announcements this afternoon. Modified baseball practice tonight will be at the high school from 5:30 to 7:30 in the gym. Please bring all of your equipment. This is a reminder to students who want to use the computer lab. For activity period, you must sign up for use of the computer lab before the end of ninth period. Thank you.
Well, after the war, I got on to Missouri, and we took a trip to Turkey to deliver the body of the Turkish ambassador back to Istanbul. The Turkish ambassador had died in this country during the war, and we were afraid to, so the Turkish people were afraid to send his body back while the war was going on, for fear of German submarines. So we took it back, and we went to Gibraltar, picked up Admiral Hewitt, who was command of the Mediterranean fleet at that time. We had a couple of destroyers and a cruiser with us, and we went up through the Dardanelles, which is a very narrow strait, really from the Mediterranean up to Turkey. While we were there for about 5 days, and you never saw so many parties in your life. Party after party after party. The Turks were so delighted that we had brought the body of their ambassador home. Turkey was neutral during the war. They were simply thrilled to death that we had taken the time to bring him back. There was another reason for our trip, however, and that was a show of force to Russia. Ever since the end of the war, Russia and on one side, England, France, and the United States on the other, had confrontations about various and sundry things regarding peace in Germany, particularly Berlin, which was the capital of Germany. And it developed into having East Berlin and West Berlin. West Berlin prospered, East Berlin did not, economically. There were some demands that Russia was making at the time down in Missouri was over there. And Russia backed down on several of those demands. So the trip had a twofold purpose and it accomplished both. After we left after we left Turkey, we went to Naples, Italy. And from there, a bunch of us had the opportunity to go to Rome. And this was about Easter time. Anyway, we went to Rome and had an audience with Pope Pius XII. Had an audience with Pope Pius XII. It's the upper left-hand picture. It's the only time in history that the Pope has given an audience to outsiders on Good Friday, which is when this occurred. Then we went to Italy, to Greece, went to Tangier, went to Algiers, and back to Gibraltar, where we dropped Admiral Hewitt and his staff. Then we sailed home to New York, and shortly thereafter, I got my long-awaited separation papers from the U.S. Navy. I went home. That's my tale. Any questions anybody has? I'll try to answer.
Oh, did you witness the second flag going up in Alabama or not?
Not the second. I witnessed the first one. I didn't know there was going to be a second. Anything else?
Can you speak about rationing or the home front,
Oh.
maybe a little bit?
I know I talked about it last time.
That's okay.
Home front was not an easy place during the war. It was rationed. Meat was rationed. Sugar was rationed. And while there certainly was some cheating, it was very hard to cheat. You had to book a tickets. Every time you go to the store and buy a pound of sugar, you give the grocer a ticket. Same thing with meat. Gasoline was rationed. The normal quota of gasoline was 3 gallons a week. 3 gallons per week. Today, living in Burnt Hills and working in Albany, you'd use up your allotment in 2 days, particularly if you drove an SUV. So people just didn't drive. There were some people who were exempt from this. Doctors, for example. Back in those days, not only did doctors see people in their offices and in hospitals, but doctors made house calls. House calls are unheard of today. Blackouts. You had blackouts, and I mean real blackouts. You had to hang black, opaque material of some sort over your windows at night so that no light got through. Otherwise, you don't turn on your lights. The Empire State Building was dark. All the other buildings throughout the country were dark at night. What else do I have on this?
Would that mean you wouldn't be able to travel at night either because of the headlights?
I'm sorry?
Would that mean you wouldn't be able to travel at night either?
For headlights on automobiles, they had a system where you had to black out the top portion and the bottom portion of the headlight with just a little narrow slit for your light to go through. They did allow that. But pretty much travel at night was, automobile travel at night was sort of suspended. Recycling. We recycle today, but it's more or less on a voluntary basis. Back during the war, recycling was required. Is that it?
I'm sorry, that